This podcast is proud to be part of the TalkSPORT Fan Network. TalkSPORT. Powered by fans.
Hello and welcome to this new edition of Red Side of the Trent, talking about the summer so far and the season ahead. And I'm delighted to be joined by the duo from Talking Reds in Greg Oram and Richard Spray. I mean, I feel a little bit guilty as I came on your guys' show not too long ago, and I got maybe the most unbelievable intro music, Greg Oram. Thank you for that. I'm so sorry that I've basically just gave you nothing in return.
No. Listen, I'm good, thanks. I think everyone that has watches Talking Reds knows that it's my signature to come up with inventive intros. It gets harder and harder. I've in fact just finished a brand new intro for our next episode that's going to be coming up very soon on Talking Reds. So you did well deserve the intro, Adam, and it was a joy putting it together. But I'm glad to be here. Thank you for welcoming me.
No, Richard, how are you?
Yeah, I'm good. A little worse for wear. I'm traveling back 13 and a half hours from the Rocky Mountains in Colorado, so I'm a bit, as we'd say in the UK, knackered, right? So but hey, with all that being said, there's a lot of good things to be talking about with Forest right now, so that gives you the energy you need. Yeah, that's what you do when you have 7 people in your family. You can't fly that much because otherwise your entire bank account's just been bled dry. So yeah, we had to do that. We had to do the travel. It was long. It was very long, but it was a beautiful place to hang out in and then come home to the comfort of Oklahoma. So doing well though.
To the city ground in less time, surely. That
might be right there.
That is actually ridiculous. Fair play to you if you're driving that. I mean, I struggle 3 hours down the road to like Bristol or something like that. That kill me.
Well, I'm about to do the same tomorrow. I think I'm heading off to Europe and taking the car and driving to Poland. So it's
less time than 13 and a half hours. I'll tell you that, Greg.
Well, if I did it straight, it's 14, but we're stopping off on the way, so we're breaking it up. So it's good fun. You should try driving that kind of route or trip. It's good fun, eh, Richard?
It is good fun, actually.
You'll see a lot more countries though than in America driving that far. So
that's true.
Peaks and troughs. But let's start with the main topic of Forest basically, and that is Morgan Gibbs-White signing this new deal. Greg, I mean, it's come absolutely out of the blue. I mean, it just seemed like David Ornstein was saying Forest are going to try and get him to sign a new deal on a lot more money. Obviously, that's kind of what the angle has potentially always been, and then suddenly. There's a picture of him with Marinakis from last night's game against Fulham as we record this. And he signed a new deal. Thoughts?
It did kind of come out of the blue, but at the same time, nothing surprises me anymore. It almost felt contrived that David Ornstein tweeted that just as the final whistle was going against Fulham, because it felt like it was all set up for Marinakis and Gibbs-White to have those photographs taken. So it felt like it was in the pipeline, obviously, and the journalist kind of, rather than say it's all going to happen, he's been given the heads up that, hey, Morgan Gibbs-White signed the contract, and all of a sudden the collective ears of every Forest fan in the universe all perked up, and everyone started getting just a little bit more excited, but at the same time not getting too carried away, thinking, well, look, we've had the here we goes from Fabrizio Romano 2 weeks ago, and to be honest with you, he's kind of diluted his impact, I think, in the last few weeks or so. But David Ornstein seems to be the chap that gets it right most of the time. I know that he also had involvement in kind of leaking or talking about the initial Gibbs-White to Spurs move, because I think that they all felt, or they all see, it all seemed from what they were hearing that it was an absolute done deal. And all the Spurs fans were adamant it was an absolute done deal, but they didn't bank on Mr. Marinakis. And all this talk about, you've never negotiated with Daniel Levy before. Well, you haven't come up against Marinakis. This is a guy with ambition that everyone knows about. And I don't know that we'll ever get to know the ins and outs, whys and wherefores of this so-called confidentiality clause, and how and why, and if he was really able to block it and how much he was sailing close to the wind. But what I mentioned on our most recent pod was that it felt like they were trying to buy time. They were trying to buy some time, get him into the room, and get the I don't know. Get the medieval tools out really, and get to work on him a little bit, and it seems to have worked. And so Morgan Gibbs-White has held himself professionally. He has not put a foot wrong since all of this happened. To be honest with you, he's come into training. He's held his head high. He's played the games. He hasn't come out with any silly statements. He hasn't used the media at all to drive it one way or the other. I understand fully that players, footballers will have their heads potentially turned, and the promise or the idea of playing Champions League football when you're 25 years old, and you've just missed out as well. You thought you were going to get it with Forest, but you've just missed out. And it's almost like you've got used to it in your head that I'm playing Champions League football next season. And as much as he's disappointed, as all the Forest players are, and Ryan Yates was talking about it on a recent podcast, how disappointed they are, it may well have been that he thought, I think I can probably go and take my opportunity now. But it's Forest and it's Marinakis. And whilst other clubs are struggling to keep their star players in line, Forest have done it again. And the ambition and the fact that Mr. Marinakis has taken personal control of this, I think, has made a huge difference. I'm thrilled. I think we're all thrilled, but I'm realistic that it doesn't mean that he's signed and he's here to 2028. He's added a year onto his existing deal. He's fattened the money big time. I'm certain there'll be a release clause of sorts in there that may or may not become public knowledge that won't be possibly available for another 12 months. So I'm in my head, we've got him for another 12 months. And I think we would all have taken that if someone had said to us a week ago, look, you can have him for another 12 months and then you'll lose him for 75 million. I think we'd have all have taken that.
The new release clause is now £61 million, potentially. I'm joking. Richard, I mean, Greg touched on a lot of great points there. I mean, Marinakis flying in personally to do it all. I mean, do you think this kind of must really imply that Tottenham never had a leg to stand on with this release clause? Because it's not very often that a club meets a release clause and then it doesn't happen. Like David Ornstein said, it was like, release clause been met. Then he's having a medical. Then it's like, well, no, he's not. We're putting a stop to this because it seems like something's not quite right. So this must squash all of that, which is great. And also, but I do agree with Greg as well that maybe it's more of a verbal agreement, like stay one more year. If this money gets met, then you can go. If we don't get to our objectives of maybe getting into Europe again, whether that's Europa League, Conference League, or Champions League, we don't know. But what's your opinion on it? Are you quite happy, or are you still a little bit more reserved and see what happens in what he does on the pitch? Because let's face it, he might not get forgiven straight away by all Forest fans.
Yeah, I wonder about that, because we talked about it on our pod. There's just the nature of fans in general, how fickle we can all be, right? We can be so engaged and love someone so much. And then as soon as we feel like they've sort of turned on us and they've gone a different direction than we had hoped, then all of a sudden now they're enemy number one. And then as soon as things shift back again, now they're the most beloved, figure in our football club. And so I can't imagine it'll change. It will take that long for that to happen. But I am thrilled. I mean, he's been the most, I think, polarizing and exciting player for me since Stuart Pearce. There's lots of players that we've loved, Brice Samba, various other players, Brennan Johnson, obviously. But to have that kind of guy, that kind of personality, that kind of, I call him like a Kobe Bryant-esque if you're a fan of NBA basketball, because he just sort of seems to get the best out of everybody else around him, or at least demand that. I'm hoping we see a little bit of an uptick from a metric standpoint. I think we'd all like to see him be a little bit more, have a little bit more precision on his shooting, a little bit more goals. But to have that kind of player with that creativity and that kind of excitement continuing to be a focal point and a pivot point in how we do things, especially on the transition, is is what we've needed. And to Greg's point, and I know he's mentioned this before on our podcast as well, and just in our WhatsApp group, that it had to be done because it felt like we were just too much in limbo, whether that be in terms of getting more money in the coffers or whether that meant, keeping him here and understanding what his wages look like. So from a financial standpoint, we have a better understanding of what our position is. And so by doing it the way that they did it, but it's just such a Spursy moment for that to happen to them. And it's such a Forest moment for us to do that to them. So it's so much joy now, because now we feel like when everything's sort of gotten stagnant, and there's lots of conjecture out there and lots of rumors, finally we have at least something moving in a direction that we feel like keeps us contained, keeps that core together of players that we've had the last few seasons. And he's been there since virtually the beginning of this Premier League experience that we've had. So having that kind of consistency, and a guy that we know Nuno gets along with and loves and appreciates and respects, and to be that guy that sort of is that field general. So definitely nothing but positivity. I kind of made peace with the fact that my favorite player in the last 30 years was moving on, and I understood the reasons. Not to Tottenham, as we kind of talked about, Adam, before he came on. Not there. That's not the destination we all envisioned for him. But it's just great to know that he's still wearing the Garibaldi red. He's still going to electrify the city ground and be a great, at least important cog for us over the next 6 months. I hope we at least get that out of him, kind of similar to what Cunha did. With Wolves, getting the right contract structure and putting us in a position where it's beneficial for both parties moving forward. And it's not some release clause that nobody really understood, or at least it was very internalized in terms of who's aware of it. And then we can move forward with a better price point, I think, and a better return for what we need.
Yeah, I mean, hopefully it's either Gibbs-White's played a blinder in terms of manipulating Forest to pay him more money, or Marinakis is just I don't know, he's a madman. But do you I'd like to ask you both this, so feel free, whichever one wants to jump in first. Do you see this deal basically being a bit of a domino effect now for the start of our transfer window, because it has been very stagnant? I mean, I get we've signed 2 players from Botafogo, both looked quite good last night. I mean, I didn't really watch the Fulham game, I'll be honest. Friendlies sometimes aren't for me, and I was just knackered anyway. But it has been a little stagnant. Edu's been getting a lot of flack, but this could really propel us, and we've done some really good business off the pitch, but this obviously seems like the biggest deal to do. Feel free, whichever one wants to jump in first.
I was just thinking now whilst you were both talking before about how this, in my opinion, will be the catalyst now for everything to move forwards. Because if you go back 3 weeks, 4 weeks, the Igor Jesus and the Jair Cunha deals were being spoken about before the Club World Cup, and Curibano was in there. It was all getting very exciting. And so we were all getting revved up, and we were looking at deadlines and when players might come. And we were very patient with the Botafogo boys coming in. But then we had Ola Aina and Nico Williams both signing new contracts. So the feel-good factor was great. And we were now thinking, okay, we've got Callum Hudson-Odoi's pinned down when we're moving in the right direction. And then all of a sudden, there was the left turn, which was the Alanga situation with Newcastle, which probably always felt like he was going to go. And as much as we were stinging a little bit from that one, that in the end, I think, at the time I felt like I wanted more money, but on reflection, I think it's 55 rising to 60 or something like that. That feels about right. And I'm actually really quite pleased that the club managed to negotiate that kind of money for that player. But the thing that upset the apple cart was the Gibbs-White thing with the Spurs clause and all the stuff we know about. And that has really, really, really put the cat amongst the pigeons. And the whole window then just felt like it was going wrong. The club weren't moving quick enough. No one knew about the targets in terms of, has a bid gone in? Are we going after him? Why have we missed out on him? He looks like he's now going there. What's going on? I don't blame Edu at all. I don't think it's his brief. He hasn't come in to run the transfers for Forest. So all the people that are getting fed up with Edu, My opinion, I think, is that you're looking at the wrong guy. He's come in as the whole Marinakis Empire guru to, have a say in matters, but it's Georgios Sirianos and another that lead the recruitment at Forest. But it just feels like it's all been put on hold or all just gone very slowly because we wanted to get the Gibbs-White thing sorted out. And it took a bit longer than we wanted, but maybe it just turned out the way it turned out because it needed him to come back from being on holiday. It needed him to be in training. They needed to have him back at the training ground to start talking to him and start the process. It needed him to play in the friendly against Monaco and that kind of fan reaction and him to kind of feel what it's like to wear the new kit. It needed him to I know he missed flying out with the boys because of the problems with his partner and their child that's on the way. Maybe it needed that moment for him to kind of reflect again on his life and what really matters the most to him. I don't know. I'm just speculating. And then to come out and join the boys, it all feels like it's come together. And right now, I really feel that the club are going to turn the corner and it's going to be full systems go on Ndoye and others coming in. We've got a lot of work to do, and I'm sure we'll talk about targets and who we need and what positions we need, but we know we need a winger at least, probably 2 or 3. So yeah, in answer to your question, to keep it very, very simple, the Morgan Gibbs-White pen on paper has made everyone happy, and I think the recruitment team can now focus on getting those signings through the door that we need.
Richard, anything to add there? Because I think me and Greg are kind of on the same wavelength in terms of it maybe turning into a domino effect now that starts that going. Because Christian said quite rightly in some respects, it does almost look like a sinking ship from afar when you two of your best productive players are about to leave. But now you've managed to turn one of them and keep him here, who you would consider, and I'm going to use an American term, he could be a franchise player, Morgan Gibbs-White. He's got that capability of being that sort of person here. So what's your thoughts on it? Or do you think that's now starts the revolving door of players?
I absolutely do. I think, when you're a footballer from afar, right, and you're a person, maybe and Dan Ndoye as an example, that's looking at what's going on, understanding that, every club's going to have priorities. It's easy for us to sit back because we see the gaps, we see the holes on the pitch in terms of looking at what Elanga's left behind, recognizing that Jota, while at times brings some energy off the bench, he's not the kind of player that's going to change the game significantly for you. That talent quotient needs to be better. And so, and tendencies are that talent gravitates to talent, and you want to see players like Gibbs-White involved because if you're in Dan Ndoye, even though you've been in Serie A, I'm sure you're acutely aware of how good of a player he is and how much he can turn the tides and how much he can be a feeder for those forward players and provide that opportunity to score, because we've seen him do it. And so it feels like it can be one of those things that does tip the scales, simply because you have a guy with extreme talent and who can continue to progress. I don't think he's hit his ceiling yet. There's still more in him. I don't think any of us would disagree with that. And so to be a part of that kind of project, I know that's been bandied about quite frequently with players like Ndoye, that you want to see the project map have a little bit more clarity, as we all did, right? But our expectations of what certain people do in those administrative roles and those leadership roles within the club overall may be very different than what their priority list is, and that at the top of that list could have been Gibbs-White. And so, as Greg pointed out, as you're pointing out, Adam, you kind of had to have that just to understand exactly where you were and what you could spend and what you were comfortable with, but also in terms of the dynamics on the pitch and recognizing what you want to do as a football club going forward. Because, he may be a 10 in our minds, but there's a lot more I think that he can offer. He can drop deep, he can do other things, and we'll see how Nuno deploys that. But it's hard to fully actualize a plan in the minds of others when it just doesn't seem to be there, when everything's in limbo. So I'm glad that this is the hopefully domino number one, as you said, and then it'll just continue to progress from there. and we just continue to build depth to the squad and add talent. But we all recognize that right side, especially in the attacking position, needs to be addressed, and I'm sure it will be. But I'm grateful that we have something exciting to look forward to. And the whole Edu thing, I just didn't quite get. It's just felt like a bit of a spurious correlation, right? Just because his presence was there doesn't mean he's the catalyst to why things aren't moving the way that you want them, because I doubt he's in that much in the weeds, given his role. But we'll see what happens. But I'm extremely positive that it is going to be that first sort of turn of the dial to try to get things progressing in terms of what kind of squad we're going to have, and the size of it and the depth of it and the talent level.
Yeah, I mean, Greg's quite right. I mean, it's George Sinier on us. I think Pedro Ferreira is head of recruitment. That's his official role in the club. And then you've got Ross Wilson, who could may not be going to Newcastle, but he is like a CFO kind of role, which is more bringing in young players as well as helping out with first team recruitment. So like you say, Greg, it's a team effort. So, but just last little thing before we move on this, I do want to talk about Marinakis and his role in all of this, because he gets so much scrutiny online because he's big, he's kind of there, he's always in people's faces. Obviously the whole out of context thing people saw with Nuno last season when he come on the pitch against Leicester. I personally think, I mean, how many owners do you see in world football that are as present as him? Yes, it can look a little bit chaotic at times from a distance, but for me personally, I think he's always walked the walk and talked the talk personally since he's come in. I mean, I was in the Market Square when he was like, prepare for trophies. So I was like, are you kidding me? Like what are you on about? Within 3 seasons of being back in the Premier League, we're going back to Europe for the first time in 30 years. I think the bloke is serious as a heart attack.
Listen, I absolutely love him. I'm drawn to controversial characters because I just am. I'm a say it as you see it kind of person, and I've been probably caught out a few times on podcasts because I can sometimes just say what I mean in my head, and people don't like it sometimes. But ultimately, I call it as it is. I mean, I've got the Forest bias towards him, of course, but I try to think if he was the owner of another football club, I'd probably be quite envious because I want that. I want his passion. I want his drive. You know, when he came on the pitch and everyone lost their marbles over the interaction with Nuno, I don't really give a damn if he was telling him off. So bloody what? Who cares? I mean, so what? It's his club. It's our club. He owns the club. Look how many millions and millions and millions of pounds he has put in, and he's converted them into shares to write stuff off. You know, I want an owner with passion, with dedication, ambition, and he's got all of that in abundance. He's a larger-than-life character. He's an easy target in many, many different ways from the media and from fans of other club. They will abuse him because of the way he looks. They will abuse him because of the way he acts. They will abuse him because he owns Nottingham Forest. And we have become a club that stands up for itself and stands apart. I think we've always been a very individual club. It's easy to say as a Forest fan, but there isn't another club like Nottingham Forest in the world, and there never has been. We've always just managed to do things differently. And maybe it's because we had the most controversial of controversial characters at our club, leading the way and leading the charge and sticking 2 fingers up to everyone in Brian Clough. Maybe it's just in our blood that we are used to that, and we're used to having someone like that who doesn't bow down to authority and doesn't bow down to the masses and says, no, up yours, this is how it's going to be done. If you want to take me on, then you take me on. And if he ends up losing a fight, you're going to have to hold him in a sumo wrestling hold and pin him down. And like he'll have a bloody nose and he'll still try and get up. Because that's just the way he is. He's a winner. He's a born winner. And that winning mentality is not something that we've had at Nottingham Forest since, well, in such a long time, since really Brian Clough left. I know we flirted with it. Frank Clark did well, but that was really on the fringes of the Clough era. Now we've been completely out of the Clough era and completely, away from any kind of success in the top flight. There's a whole generation, including probably yourself, Adam, to a certain degree, that just haven't experienced what it's like to be a top flight club. And when you get back into the top flight, when you get back into the Prem, we know it is about money. And at the end of the day, Marinakis has got money to burn. If he's allowed to spend it, he'll spend it. So in doing what he's doing, it's no surprise to me that Forest are on the up, because there are owners out there that, well, they'll lose money. They don't want to lose that much money. He's quite prepared to lose a load of money, and he's got a dream, and he's not going to stop. And which is why I've always been completely relaxed that this transfer window is going to be absolutely fine. Yes, we would have liked 1 or 2 in before now, etc., etc., etc. But he ain't stopping yet. He ain't stopping now. I love him. I think I've made that perfectly clear with my monologue again. It's funny because I don't get a chance to do this on my pod because I'm hosting and bringing everybody else in with their opinions. So I'm quite enjoying getting a chance to spout mine. But yeah, I love him. I think he's brilliant. And I tell you what, if he leaves the club, we'll be very sorry.
It's going to be a great TikTok clip. I'm just going to I've just got to put this image up. Like, this is like, our owner would beat your owner in a fight. That's all I'm saying. That's just hilarious. I love AI. It comes up with some great stuff. Yeah. Richard, what's your thoughts on obviously our owner? Because I mean, long gone are the Fawaz days of him having arguments with people on Twitter. I mean, Marinakis doesn't do any of that. He just shows up and kind of does it himself, doesn't he?
He does, yeah. I mean, that image is perfect because I was going to say, what's your choice? Do you want a Daniel Levy or do you want an Evangelos Marinakis? Because the fire that drives him, right, to end up on the pitch is the same fire that drives him to want to expect the people in the organization to do the best they could do to maximize what this club is capable of. And he's got ambition in spades. He's ready to. He's the one who promised Europe, and we ended up getting that much faster than any of us expected. I tend to believe, and maybe this is just me being somewhat naive, that he's going to do what he does at certain intervals to show how much he cares about the history of the club, how much he wants to bring some of that back and take it even. I wouldn't say further, because how could you go further than winning, 2 European Cups consecutively, but other than winning the Premier League. But, it wouldn't surprise me if that's on the requirement list of what he's given his team there running the club. But at the same time, I think it's the same passion that drives, that same fire that drives him to do that is the same fire that everyone seems to criticize. But yet I think internally and within our fan base, we all recognize there may be isolated moments where we feel like maybe that went a little bit, it's approaching the edge or slightly over the edge, if you will. But you know what? We're going to take it, as Greg pointed out, because ultimately that's what's going to drive us forward and make us one of the bigger clubs in the Premier League now. That's going to get us back to the heights of Champions League. That's going to make us competitive year in and year out and sustain us as a club, not just this club that sort of like drifts, as we saw with Tottenham last season, or what we've seen since Sir Alex Ferguson with Manchester United. Because I can tell you right now, if you polled my brother's a Manchester United fan, if you polled those kinds of fan bases and said which one, I know, Greg can't do anything about it, unfortunately. But he did enjoy coming watch Wolves with us. He enjoyed that match. Let me tell you, he was surprised how much he enjoyed the City Ground. But I think if you poll those fan bases, there's no doubt what they would tell you. There's no doubt they'd prefer to have an Evangelos Marinakis involved. There may be the people who just they see him as Marmite, kind of thing. But ultimately, I'd rather have a guy like that who, with that much love and appreciation, respect. I mean, he certainly has a respect of the dressing room, because I don't think those videos are feigned. I don't think that Ola Aina getting excited and calling him Big Boss is something that's fake. Right. In my mind, that's genuine. I think they appreciate him. Yeah, you recognize too. You better be careful at times, I'm sure, because like Greg said, he'll definitely give you a piece of his mind if the moment dictates it. But he's absolutely the kind of guy you want kind of at the helm, if you will, or at least the benefactor. Because I do think he's letting the right people that are in the club, leading the club financially, recruiting, all of that. I think he's letting them do their job. He certainly has an opinion. I don't think he'll be short to share that, but I do believe that he's going to let them do their jobs as well. I think you've seen evidence of that. But I appreciate in isolated moments like he did with Morgan Gibbs-White, he's going to come in and he's going to tell him, look, and give him the vision and say, we need you, and I think there's a quote out there from him in regards to that just in the last 24 hours. So you see that kind of evidence of the fact that he's going to drift into the sort of like, I guess, administrative sort of elements judiciously, which I appreciate. He's got a good balance, basically.
I think when we I think it was when we just lost out to getting in the playoffs, when we the whole Stoke situation. Sabri Lamouchi, Stoke, a few years ago, it was an absolute capitulation. I think it was. This is the scenario that happened when they came back in for pre-season. I think it was that they had a meeting and he was on the big screen and he was giving them a dressing down, and it all got put into the media. And I think he might have given them a dressing down on the big screen, the players that is, as well as maybe the manager as well. And I remember at the time there was folk on Twitter, oh, he shouldn't be doing that, and he shouldn't be doing. I absolutely loved it. I was like, as a business owner, I'm like, why not? It's like they've royally screwed up. This guy's a winner. He wants to win. He's not going to sit there and go, oh, never mind, lads. You know, he is going to get on there and he will get involved. He'll say, this isn't acceptable. You know, he's the big guy. So I remember that, and I'd say that I felt like there's too many snowflakes out there that just don't know how the real world works. And ultimately, this guy has invested time, energy, money, power, passion, life into Nottingham Forest, and we are richly the better off for it.
I mean, I think he would have obviously been disappointed in terms of the slight capitulation we did have, because it was right in our hands, and then our home form decided to take an absolute nosedive. But I think in hindsight, I think when he kind of looks back at it from afar, the money that we spent and like the transfers we did, I think he would have gone, do you know what? We didn't really aim to get it into where we were, and we've still overachieved and got back into Europe. And I think that's now still a base to build on. But I absolutely love him. I mean, I think players probably appreciate him as well, because he's willing to fight for you. So if he's willing to fight for you, you best be willing to fight for him. So I think it goes hand in hand, and you either accept that or you don't. And if you don't accept that, you're gonna leave the football club. It's as simple as that. I mean, I absolutely love it. But if anyone's watching this, this is a pre-recording. I will give you that little insight. But please do drop us a like and a subscribe, especially if you enjoy Greg Oram's absolute monologue. I mean, it's the test of times. I'm not going to lie. Just want to get back to last season, guys. I mean, the dust has settled. Everything's gone. We don't know what European competition is. Let's leave that aside. How much did you enjoy last season, Richard? I mean, it was an absolute blast when you really think about it. I mean, we won so many games of football. It was great.
Yeah, it was definitely unexpected. I think many of us probably did predict that sort of mid-table. Like, pining for mid-table seems a bit weird now, considering where we ended up, but that's where we were, right? We were all kind of like going, oh, yeah, we could just be a Crystal Palace, if we could just be a Brighton, you know. I mean, that's the kind of model we're sort of trying to achieve, and to get where we did in the end, even though it wasn't what we anticipated, because our expectations kind of got, I think, elevated at a certain point, especially when we were in third for like 12 consecutive weeks, and so you do sort of reset and go, wow, okay, now we're anticipating Champions League, and so the disappointment sort of came, and but when, like you said, when the dust settled, you go, wow, what an achievement. I mean, not only in terms of what we did in the table, getting back to Europe and all of that is absolutely incredible, and certainly accelerated. I think the roadmap probably was at some point in the future to get to Europe, right? And I know that Marinakis would have demanded it, and he vocalized that. But at the same time, I think it's the build that we're seeing. It's the development of some of the players. It's seeing players like Nico Williams and Ola Aina and Nikola Milenkovic and Murillo and Anderson and all these players begin to progress. You saw what Elanga became. It's unfortunate he left, but it's great for him in terms of his development. And we were a huge part of that, to see what Nuno did to the fan base. Because has anyone told you that you would be struggling to say that Steve Cooper is your favorite manager in the last 20 years, right? And now you're saying Nuno might be your favorite manager in the last 20 years, simply because of what he's doing and what he's developing with this team. I think everyone thought you were crazy. I mean, given where we were the season before, given the nightmare that it was, PSR, failings, just the challenge of Nuno coming into such a difficult situation, coming off of a guy who is beloved. I mean, there's just so many things. And then to see all of that dissipate when Greg and I were watching those videos of them in training, I think they were over in Spain, right? The previous offseason date.
Yeah.
It just looked like a completely different environment. And we're like, are we getting a bit too ahead of ourselves? Are we creating something? Are we hoping for something? Is is it a bit of fool's gold? And in reality, no. I mean, the culture had really taken a whole another turn, and all of that to me is just laying the foundation of a word that Raf likes to talk about all the time on our podcast, Random Pundit, which is sustainability. And I think we are seeing that unfold. And so I'm nothing more than just excited. Even if we finish 10th or 11th this season, the reality is we're in Europe. And if we can go deep in that, we can continue to build from a revenue standpoint, continue to take that talent that we have and move that to another level, few percentages higher in terms of output. I think there's a lot that's going to come that we're really going to be excited about, including hopefully Champions League. So definitely nothing but pure and unadulterated joy at this point.
Yeah, I mean, Greg, I would like a little bit more from you. I mean, because what I really enjoyed about last season was how we were just not like any other team in the league. We were completely against the grain. As you quite rightly said in a roundabout way, we are the rebel city. We don't do things how everyone else would like to do it. Everyone was complaining about it, and I absolutely adored it until it came unstuck, obviously, at the end where we should have got Champions League. But I thought it was great. And I think it's a bit of a warning to the rest of the league, actually, this season, because if we suddenly start to play a bit more possession-based, but then we can revert back to being counter-attack, a lot of teams aren't going to be able to work us out too well, I would like to think. And therefore, I think there's some sort of sustainability of league position, hopefully.
Yeah, I completely agree. I loved last season, obviously, like every Forest fan. But Steve Cooper, I want to quickly mention, will forevermore be in all of our hearts. What he did to get us into the Premier League and then keep us up, which was a bigger deal, in my opinion, to keep us up in that first season was immense. And Richard's right. You know, no one thought that the next guy along was going to come close to how we'd feel about Steve Cooper. But last season, we kind of realised the dream a little bit. You know, it's getting into the Premier League is fine. Staying in the Premier League is tough. Competing and then moving forward in the Premier League, you know, a lot of teams just can't get to that level. And it all comes back to the Marinakis input. It comes back to the Marinakis dream, and his drive and ambition is really what saw Forest again last season take a step forward, because it's going through the gears, isn't it? So Nuno Espirito Santo comes in. And yes, I was one of his critics in his first half season that this isn't right and he's not playing well and I don't like his passiveness. But sure enough, the whole pre-season of last year certainly saw us sit up and take more notice. And we said, let's give Nuno a pre-season. And boy, what a difference it made. We saw a level of player coming in, Nikola Milenkovic, one who we had called for, that type of player and leader defensively and aerially to make a difference, and he did. So it had a huge impact on last season from the very start. And yeah, we are a club like no other, as I've mentioned. We do things differently, as you said, Adam, but we do things differently all the time. Every time something happens at Forest, it's headlines. Like when we get promoted back into the Premier League after 23 years, we don't just run away with the championship on a really good year like most teams do and squeak up in automatic. No, we are bottom of the championship, and we're rock bottom of the championship. And then we bring a guy in who then decides he's going to like transform the club, the team, and Forest can go on the run of runs and then end up in the playoffs and end up going up. No other team does that. It's a Forest thing. And then when you're in the Premier League in the first season, no one kind of squeaks it through and like signs 500 players. No one does that. Forest do that. I know we needed to, but we still did it. No one takes that gamble. And in the second season, you don't get a points deduction unless you're Nottingham Forest. Okay, Everton aside, but the whole Brennan Johnson thing, you don't send tweets out like we did about officials. You know, some of the things we do are controversial on the negative side, but Forest are different. And on the pitch, we were different last season because it suited us. Playing a low block is not a new thing. Yeah, but Forest played it in a different way because the transition was electrifying. They knew that they needed to have the link players in order to let loose Alanga for one, but also the front line as a whole. And the key to that was Elliot Anderson. Elliot Anderson coming in and being the linchpin to work with Gibbs-White and tandem. The amount of times that Anderson's winning the ball back on the edge of our area, or Marinakis has won it back, or Murillo's won it back, and they've handed it to him, he's handed it to Gibbs-White, and off we go. That's how many goals we scored. We're not going to play that way this season, I hope, because, well, listen, let me say again, if we play that way this season, I don't think it will be as effective, because teams will now have a plan to counter that, and we saw that in the second half of last season. I don't think we will play that way. There was talk that with Gibbs-White going, that we would then revert to a 4-3-3. Now, I've always been of the opinion that, as Richard said earlier, Gibbs-White can play in a multitude of roles. He doesn't have to play the 10. He can play as a second 8. He can play as one of 2 10s. You know, he can play deeper. Let's see what happens with him. Really, really thrilled with getting into Europe, as everybody is. A little bit nervous that we've got Europe and the squad is still coming together. So there's I'm not like this, gung-ho guy who says, oh, it's all going to be fine and everyone's going to come through. I'm a realist. What's going to be a good season this year? I don't know. A top half finish would be lovely, with a really good European campaign, and a nice cup win would be lovely. That kind of stuff. So you're already thinking about what constitutes a good season. But to your point, last year, we set up Talking Reds just over a year ago, and we couldn't have imagined that we would have so many games of the winning variety to talk about rather than the losing variety. So our first year as a podcast duo has been thrilling. Let's hope this one is just as good.
Do you know, it's funny when you see the younger generation and all they've known is Premier League, and you go, you don't know how lucky you've had it. It's like the opposite, isn't it? With us doing podcasts, we was doing it when we was absolutely, well, we started it the Cooper season. We had Hooten in charge, like I said to you guys on our pod, and it's like, it's another loss. Well, what were we doing? And then it's just been upwards since then. And obviously Premier League was a bit like, we're going to get relegated. We've signed too many players. It's just chaos. Richard, thoughts on last season was great, as we said, but Greg's touched it on there, like about stylistically. Do you see a world where, depending on what acquisitions we bring in, we can change styles and we can change it up and be that more progressive? I mean, I've literally only just edited this because Gibbs-White was in like a different colour. We weren't sure if he was staying or going. He's now in yellow because he's staying. So, I mean, it looks like a lot of gaps to plug, but I'm not sure. What do you think?
I think the right wing areas where you probably have the most gap, just simply because, I mean, that's a pretty obvious statement given that you just lost a very good footballer in Anthony Elanga, who's 23 years old, 22 years old, some of that in that range, and he's only going to continue to get better. But at the same time, I think that's the one major difficult sort of situation we have going on. But I think everything else is pretty nailed on, and you've got really good, talented players who don't have to put Morgan Gibbs-White in such a position where he has to be the only thing that can drive us to be better in terms of retaining a bit more possession, and things of that nature, being a little bit more multiple in terms of what we can do. Because as we've all said, that plan B concept is lacking. That's both in terms of the personnel, but also in terms of what Nuno might have at his disposal. I think with the advancement of Anderson, seeing a guy like Sangare hopefully continue to play at a good level, stay healthy, things of that nature. You've got a Swiss Army knife in Dominguez. Yes, you'd probably not rather see him at the right wing or at a right back position and at those kinds of situations, right? Because we've seen that kind of fail, unfortunately, but it was out of necessity sometimes that had to happen. But I would say that generally speaking, especially in the defensive area, we are really good, and we've got a lot of opportunity to fill in some, whether you see it as young sort of succession plans or other players that maybe they can develop, or whether you get someone like an Alex Moreno type who can come in and give you meaningful minutes when needed to kind of spell Williams. You could move Williams over to the right. You could, spell Aina with Williams and maybe bring a new left back in. So there's a lot of opportunity here. It may look scary to some, but from my perspective, it's opportunity that we have to put ourselves in a position where the last 10 games of the season, last 12 games of the season, that kind of dip in form won't happen. Nuno will put these guys in a position, and both in terms of what's coming in, and I'm certain he's got some input in that, and then as well as how he sets them up. Because there's players on the pitch that I think have the ability to be really exciting in a transition, but there's players who can do some really nice link-up play and some nice possession-based play in there as well. A Callum Hudson-Odoi comes to mind. I mean, he's looked really good so far in my mind in the preseason. I think he's looked even more sort of decisive and formidable on the ball, which is surprising because he's already really good at it as it is. But to see him kind of moving around and sort of creating a little bit of havoc for opposing teams, because you don't know where he's going to, what space he's going to occupy, and you just know he's such a talented footballer that wherever he ends up, he's going to create something. And so there's just a lot to look forward to, I think, and puts us in a position where maybe there is a 4-2-3-1 sort of base formation. You see this in American football all the time, right? You have these sort of base formations, and then you just build off of that, and you can kind of manipulate things and create problems if you're an opposing manager, because you don't know what's going to come at you at any given moment. I mean, he could move into a 3-5-2. He's got the capability to do that. He can move into a box midfield, right, with Sangari and Anderson playing deep, and Morgan Gibbs-White and someone like Callum in the middle, because I know you brought this up, Adam, about could we potentially see him as a second 10 or something. I know Raph loves that idea. I think Greg thinks that's a bit out of box, but I think that's definitely something that you have the ability to do now. I think that's the joy and the great things that we're doing in terms of how we're building the squad, is that we're allowing ourselves to have that multiplicity of ways of attacking opposing teams, and that just makes me even more excited about the season to come, because I think Nuno's that kind of football manager. I think he has that level of intelligence. Yeah, forget about the 4-4-2 thing that we went into against Fulham last year. That's not what we're going to do, right? That kind of thing. But I think we are going to do it more judiciously and more effectively and more tactically.
I just think we've got to, because we can't let what happened last season get put us off or whatever, because I just think you've got to always evolve in football. Look at what Pep Guardiola is doing. I know I'm one of these people that just think it's so boring because he just wins all the time, but he's just always one step ahead of trying something different. I just think we have to build that off. Part of me thinks that Nuno went with that approach last season because he's building off a base, which is what Cloughy used to do. Sort your defence out, have a good goalkeeper, which we did. We've got Golden Glove goalkeeper in our net. I think once you've sorted that out and we're defensively sound, because we generally are, you now can then build and be a bit more experimental going forward. I think someone like Dan Ndoye, who has been, as we say this, we're still not sure whether he's coming or going. I think he allows you to be a bit more possession based, because I think he's technically a little bit better than Elanga. Elanga's not the greatest ball keeping player like Callum is. Callum's got that ability to cut in and do whatever. I don't think Elanga really had that in his locker personally. I think he's more of a speed merchant, not to downgrade him, because I think he was brilliant at times, but I just never thought he was technically unbelievable as such. But Greg, was you going to come in there? Sorry.
No, not at all. I'll tell you who is going to keep hold of the ball, and that's Igor Jesus. So when I saw him play against Fulham last night in the second half, the qualities that we've heard about from him were on show. And it was very, very interesting how Forest set up with Callum Hudson-Odoi playing on the right. So he's now moved over with Igor Jesus and Chris Wood swapping between one of them being centrally, another one playing on the left. Not as a left winger, but as more on the left. They were kind of interchanging. So anything that was going forward down the left was coming from Nico if he was getting forward. But there was some lovely interchange going on between Igor Jesus and Chris Wood, which was really pleasing to see. I think we've got a player on our hands. I know that Tim Vickery and others have spoken about it, but now I've seen him in a Forest shirt, 45 minutes in a friendly against Fulham. That means absolutely sod all. But now I've seen it for myself. I'm really, really feeling positive, more positive than ever, that Igor Jesus is going to really make people sit up. I think he's going to be great. And it's interesting, yes, we are going to bring Ndoye in or another winger or more. And yes, we will play with wingers and we will have that kind of attacking strategy. But don't be too surprised if you are going to see Chris Wood and Igor Jesus on the pitch at the same time. We thought he was maybe coming in as a backup striker, and it may well be that he does have that role at times. But don't be too surprised if we see Nuno deploying them together like he did last night in that second half. It was working. Forest were, the first half we know about, it was kids and second string. Okay, the second half against Fulham's full strength side. First half we lost 2-0. Second half, we were the better team. It was Forest's first team against Fulham's first team, and it ended 1-1. We had the better chances. We forced their keeper into more saves. Jesus looked good. Woody looked good. And I tell you who else looked good was Taiwo Awoniyi. Leaner, fitter, sharper, lighter. He looked good, and I am really, really thrilled for him. I'm not getting carried away, folks. So don't think, oh God, here we go. But I was watching him, and the way he was moving, he was. I've not seen him run as fast as that, and he was put through by Jota Silva with a player, a defender on his back to kind of hassle and hurry him. And Taiwo took it nicely. He lost him and managed to get his shot off. I don't think it was the correct shot choice. The keeper saved it. I saw someone on X say, oh, was it just me that thought Taiwo was never going to score that when he went through? And I thought, what were you watching? Taiwo did really well in a centre-forward attacking mode. And I tell you what, if we can get Taiwo back to being Taiwo, then that again is another positive thing. And just one more thing I would say as well is Sangare looked good again in pre-season. Sharp, moves the ball, physical, active, mobile, forward passing. So there's players now that, those three, I mean, obviously Igor Jesus is a new signing, but if Taiwo is going to be that kind of Taiwo and Sangare is going to be that kind of Sangare, then that's three new signings there, isn't it, really? I know we caught glimpses of Taiwo, I beg your pardon, of Sangare at the end of last season, didn't we? We caught those last 5-6 games of him, and we all sat up, and Greg was made to eat his words a little bit because he'd been, on his back a touch. But listen, I'm the first to say it. I want them all to do well, but I'll say it as I see it. If I think a player's not performing well, or I think I'm scratching my head a little bit, I'll say it. But I also say, listen, last night I thought those were good. So in terms of going forward this season, stand by. It's going to be different, and the new personnel coming in are gonna hopefully see us deploy some new tactics. And the back line, as you say, Adam, all set and all sorted. But I'm keen to bring in a left back and a right back that aren't just coming in as simple cover. I want them to come in and really push Ola and Nico. I'm in love with Ola Aina. I'm in love with Nico Williams. I love them both dearly, but I'm not tied to them in blood. If the next player coming in is a kick-ass player and he takes their place, I'll be in love with him. The point I'm trying to make to you is that it doesn't mean now that they're so good they're irreplaceable. They're all replaceable. Let's just not bring in someone who's obviously going to be just cover. Those boys need pushing. Let's bring in some elite level backup for them.
Yeah, Igor Jesus and Jair have not come here to just make up the numbers. No, not a chance in a million years. That wouldn't have been sold to them. They wouldn't have come anyway. And I think Igor was wanted by teams like Arsenal and as such. No, but that's this really pleasing report to hear, because I didn't watch the Fulham game. I was too busy. But
there wasn't an awful lot of great things going on, but those were the good things.
Question for both of you. I feel like I might know the answer from at least one of you, and this is something I knew I've come up with. Who's a player last season that surprised you and has now got a little bit of extra weight going into this season? Richard Spray, I'm going to start with yourself.
It's hard to say this is a surprise because I think he's continued to progress, but I think Nico Williams' ability to defend is, I don't think he was unlocked as much on the offensive side of it in terms of advancing up the pitch and playing a little bit higher up the pitch. And, I think all the same thing. He wasn't quite as utilized the same way as more of a wing back sort of role. But I think Nico's defensive ability was a huge step forward for him last season. I think it cemented him as one of the best fullbacks in the Premier League in my mind. And the way he goes about it with such humility and such quietness, it's sort of like, I kind of like that. It's just sort of like this sort of assassin-like sort of capability of just getting the ball back, winning it back, and then getting up the pitch because he's got enough pace and enough ability on the ball to be difficult for an opposing team. But that's the player, I think, in my mind, that it'll be interesting to see what that looks like when that goes to another level this season. And so I'm hoping that we see that from him. But I think he's got a sort of leadership sort of vibe about him as well. I mean, he's a huge part of what Wales does and has been for a number of years now, and he's only 24. So, if I've answered your question correctly, I think that's the sorry, Adam, I'm a little bit wearied, so my brain's starting to slow down a bit, so I apologize. But I definitely think that from my perspective, he was a player who took another step to such a degree where people were almost throwing it out there that he may have been player of the season. Just the amount of consistency and what he showed defensively, I think last season was a huge step forward for him in terms of what he'll mean to the club going forward. And they've invested in him, which shows that they believe it as well.
Yeah, no, I'd agree. I think he's now going to carry that bit of extra weight to then go on and do another season of being consistent, being defensively sound. I think his next level is now getting them numbers up slightly more from an offensive point of view.
Right.
So let's see what he does there. I think he would even himself say that he should have probably scored more goals last season from left back. I mean, he had some terrific efforts. He's got lovely technique. I mean, I went to an open training session and he scored an absolute worldie. And he's got it in his locker. I think it's just about taking those opportunities when he can. Greg, same question to you.
Go ahead, sorry.
No. So the player that surprised me the most last season and who will hopefully go on this season with a bit more oomph and a bit more profile.
Well, just a bit more weight on their shoulders. He's got a bit more responsibility now to show that again and maybe a bit more.
So the only player I can pin that down to is Elliot Anderson. Because when he came into the club, I didn't know what we were getting. It happened very quickly, and so I thought he was a winger. I didn't really know anything about him, and I never imagined he was going to be as good as he is. I know that he came with a reputation, and no one wanted to lose him from Newcastle, and they all thought highly of him. But it kind of felt like we were doing them a bit of a favour to get a young player through the door who would develop, who we might see on the pitch at times, and I didn't know how much game time he'd get. For him to then, not start the season, which again, that wasn't a surprise. Sangare and Danilo, we know what happened with those two. But very, very quickly to come into the team and then pretty much be immovable from that team. We saw his qualities on show. He just really surprised me. And he went on to continue to surprise me. He needs to score more goals. I think we know that. He got 2 last season. And this season, he's got a higher profile. And so therefore, with the under-21s winning the Euros, with him really at the heart of it and being, I think, their best player or one of their best players alongside Harvey Elliott and so on, he really drove that team. And I think he's there to drive the Forest team now. So having him with Morgan Gibbs-White and Callum Hudson-Odoi, I know we've lost Alanga, that trio with Woody and Igor Jesus, we've got some still very, very good players. So, yeah, Elliot Anderson for me was my surprise package from last season. Not surprised anymore, and I'm expecting big things from him this season.
Yeah, no, I can't wait. I mean, he's not my profile picture for any other reason because I just absolutely love the way he plays football and epitomizes it. And I fear that is keeping him, but we'll get astronomical money for him. Something fun to round off the pod, guys. A couple of things, actually. This is the first thing. Richard, no 13.5-hour journeys. It's short trips around Europe. So I've been asking this to a lot of people who've come on the pod. You got to choose one team from each pot of where you would like to go on a Thursday night. I mean, Young Boys is always attractive. I say this every week. It's Wankdorf on a Thursday.
Everyone loves getting to Wankdorf on a Thursday. Who doesn't like getting Wankdorf on a Thursday?
Don't let that deter you. So, Richard, I'll start with yourself. A team from each pot of a European place you'd like to go, whether that's for the football or for the city, to be honest. It doesn't really matter.
Yeah, I was going to say probably for the city. I think Lille would be interesting. I haven't been to France, so I'd be excited to do that because I heard reports from my brother-in-law who didn't really care for Rome. I was going to initially kind of drawn to the idea of Roma because I've never been in Italy either in that first pot. But he said it was pretty disgusting, actually, which, I mean, hey, one man's opinion, right? I mean, that doesn't necessarily, I know Greg's going to Rome this summer, so he'll have a wonderful time. In pot 2, Basel sounds kind of intriguing to me. So pot 3, I don't really know much about Basel, so I'll just leave it at that. But just sounds intriguing to me based off of the locale. I would also say pot 3, Freiburg or somewhere. Oh, actually, Legia Warsaw would be really cool because I know he's obviously very connected to Poland, and so I'd be really excited to visit Poland because I've heard amazing things about Poland. And I think you're connected to Poland as well, right, Adam? So, just beautiful things about the country, beautiful things about the people. And so I think that would be a great destination for me. And then pot 4, probably Bologna. That sounds like another opportunity to get to a city in Italy that I just haven't had a chance, even when I lived there for a few years, to really, branch out and see much of Europe. So any opportunity to see, to cover, the continent a little bit more and to enjoy the Italian. I love Italian food, so I'm sure I would take great joy in visiting Bologna. So those are my 4.
I mean, Greg, I'm sorry to hear you might be in. You're not driving in Rome, are you? Because they're
we're going to Poland, and then we are going to be flying from Poland to Rome. So I'm going to be in Rome for a few days at the end of August. But and I've never been, but because I'm going, that wouldn't be my pick from pot 1. If I may say, my pick from pot 1 would be Dinamo Zagreb, because I've always wanted to go to Croatia, and actually I really think that Croatia as a country when it comes to football and that region, not necessarily underrated, but they kind of fly under the radar. They're very, very good. So Zagreb for me in pot 1. Pot 2 would probably be, I reckon, probably Fenerbahce, maybe just to go to Turkey. I'm not been to Turkey again, just to go to Turkey and experience that kind of hostile atmosphere. Potentially, I'd love that, because I think those Turkish crowds have a reputation. I'd love to experience that in person. Pot 3, yeah, I have been to Legia Warsaw ground because my wife's family live just outside Warsaw. But selfishly, I would pick Legia in my pot 3 because I'd have somewhere to stay. So that would be pretty cool. I could take my brother-in-law as well, and that would just be awesome to be able to go to see Forest at Legia. Would be really cool for me from a personal point of view. And then in pot 4, I think it would probably have to be Panathinaikos. I think Panathinaikos are a real historic, great Greek club. And, you know, my affinity to Greece and the Greeks has never been stronger following the Mr. Marinakis' latest, you know, gallivanting on behalf of our club. I know he's not obviously a Panathinaikos guy. Clearly, I know that. But, you know, to go to Panathinaikos in pot 4 would be pretty cool. I'd wear an Olympiakos shirt, perhaps, just to wind him up.
I think some other people have mentioned Panathinaikos, and we were like, well, maybe the Olympiakos Gate 7 Ultras will just come and help us. And then I had a Villa fan on talking about Jacob Ramsey, and I did this with him, and he was like, they're like in Europe, it's just men, like, and they're just crazy men, like just supporting their football clubs. So yeah, no, great. I mean, yeah, I think they're all quite attractive in their own rights. Maybe Maccabi Tel Aviv with what's going off in that region of the world.
Yeah, I might avoid that, to be honest with you, at the moment.
A strong no. So yeah, no,
I've experienced the Legia Warsaw Ultras as well. I have seen that as well, and it is so cool. So all the Ultras in Europe are on another level.
They got banned from other grounds, I think, for quite a while in Legia, I believe.
Probably.
So, or like team play. I know, like, I think a lot of Polish fans were basically boycotting going to their ground because basically their ultras were just fighting whoever came because they didn't care, basically, which is quite. I mean, it's quite nervy, I guess.
There's never been a better response from a whole crowd of ultras than the up yours to UEFA a few years back when they were banned. The ultras were banned from being in the home end and the ultras end, and they thought they got away with it, and they all sat on the side stand, and then the big banner went up with "haha, we fooled you, UEFA." I mean, for anyone who doesn't know what I'm talking about, just go and look it up on YouTube. It's hilarious and it's brilliant, and I love it.
Last thing to round off the pod, guys, and it's a Chris Elmer special. He won't mind me saying that. It's a red hot take. I've taken this. I mean, I'm trying to basically keep the spirit of Forest all over in weekly podcasts or daily podcasts alive with this sort of thing. Greg, I'm going to start with yourself. What's your red hot take for the new season? I mean, if you're going to have more than one, fine, whatever. But yeah, what you got for us?
Cool. I'll tell you what, you're asking someone here. He does come out with red hot takes a little bit too often sometimes, and almost sometimes wishes he kept his mouth shut. But red hot take, that is an interesting one. Okay, my red hot take is that Chris Wood is going to score more goals this season in the Premier League than he scored last season. It wasn't just a one season wonder blitz, because if you remember the season before in the Premier League, he scored 14. So he still had a very good season the season before. Last season, he was out injured for a spell, and that really upset the apple cart a little bit. I think he'd have got 25 goals last season. And I watched him last night put that header away in true Chris Wood fashion. He hasn't changed. He was running back. There was a bit at the end. All of a sudden, there was one of our players was defending one of their wingers going down into the our bottom corner, and it was Chris Wood, and it was fantastic to see. So he's got his new deal. He's got hopefully some nice knee injections on order, just in case his legs start to go. And he's going to score more goals last season in the Premier League this season. So 20 plus goals for Chris Wood coming up.
Brilliant. Richard Spray, I've actively ignored the one message you put in our WhatsApp group in organising this pod. So I don't really even remember what it actually was. But so your red hot take, please.
So my red hot take has two components to it, right? The first one is Igor Jesus will score more goals than Ekitike from Liverpool. That's my one red hot take. And then the second part of that is, by virtue of what Greg just said, we're going to tack that on to what Igor Jesus does, and they're going to be in the top 5 most goals scored for a pair of strikers in the Premier League. And I just have such an immense... I am so invested in that man now. I think I love his swagger. I love his... just the air about him, you know what I mean? And I think we need a little bit of that, and he's the antithesis to Chris Wood in that way, right? I mean, Chris Wood's such a nice, humble guy. As a new dad, he's going to have a lot more energy and excitement, about life in general. I mean, he's probably going to be a little bit tired too, because I know what that's like having 5 kids. It's a lot especially when they're babies. But at the same time, I think he's going to have a little bit more energy, even as a guy at 33 who's obviously getting to the twilight of his career. I think Greg's right. I think there's going to be more talent around him and utilized in a different way to allow for that to be unlocked, even with losing Elanga, who obviously that was such a critical partnership for 2 consecutive seasons, the kinds of assists that he gave him, the way that he fed him the ball. But you saw that from Nico. That was exciting to see. Granted, again, preseason, don't get too excited about that. But the move as a football move, that cross and Chris Wood's positioning is just so elite, right? And his ability to find that little bit of space to get a slight advantage over whoever's defending him. And I think the pairing of those two guys, because they're not the same kind of player, because they can play off of each other, I think that's, to me, is going to be a huge benefit for Forest, because I think even if Chris Wood were to dip just slightly, you've got hopefully another guy coming in that I think has more to offer, and the kind of coaching and the development. We've seen it unfold with other players with Forest to date, including bringing Chris Wood back from a guy who was a prolific goal scorer to not being able to score goals at Newcastle, for example, and sort of being a forgotten man to becoming a centerpiece for what we do offensively as a football club. So those two guys to me, and I think Jesus, man, that guy's got, this is a very American term to say about players, but he's got the juice. Okay, he's got the juice. And as Chris Aylmer likes to say, re-energizing the Forest machine. That's what's going to happen with this guy. And I think he's going to bring it. And I love to see that, that Dragon Ball Z celebration every week. That would make nothing would make us happier, right, than to see that every week, but just to see it frequently. But I think he gets about 12 to 14 goals across all competitions, and you pair that with Wood, and that puts you in a really elite space, I think, in terms of what we do from a striker position.
Yeah, I mean, I like the look of Jesus. I mean, he's got lovely teeth. I mean, they are white.
Yeah, what is up with that?
He had a spell in Saudi, didn't he? So maybe that's when it all got all sorted.
There you go.
He was doing. But no, I like his profile. I think he's not, like you say, he's not quite like a natural goal scorer, but I think he offers other elements to his game in terms of like, I think he's probably a better build-up player. He can pass the ball. He can do a little bit more than Chris Wood. And Chris Wood, I think we kind of then relieve his off-the-ball duties of like pressing and everything. You've got this young Brazilian who wants to keep his number 9 shirt for the national team. Let's forget it. In a World Cup year, he's going to be wanting to run the hard miles and really make a name for himself in England and on the continent in Europe to keep that number 9 shirt for the yellow and blue in Brazil there. So yeah, no, I'm really, really great red hot takes. I hope we're revisiting this in due course and going, we've smashed it. We've won the Premier League because they've both scored too many goals. And we've won the Europa League as well. We've won it all, treble, quadruple, whatever you want to call it. So yeah, no, I'm really looking forward to the summer, guys. What's coming up on Talking Reds, Greg? What's coming up in the near future?
So at the time of us recording this, we are going to do the Fulham friendly was last night. The Gibbs-White contract was signed last night. We're going to do a live episode later on this evening, which is Sunday at 8 p.m. So that's coming up, and then following that, I'm going to be away, so we're going to just hop on whenever we can with news and opinion. We're going to do our pre-season predictions episode around the 11th or 12th of August with Raf and Danscape. And then we will be getting into the previews and review shows, because all of a sudden the season's going to be starting. The episodes that we like to do, which you came on, the one with, we've got more of those coming as well. We've got a few guests kind of lined up. It's all about timing, isn't it? And getting the diaries together. So we're going to be doing some of those probably more in September once I'm back from my trip. But you know what it's like, Adam. You know, best intentions are well laid, and all of a sudden, so much happens. You've got to jump on and do an emergency one, and there's so much to talk about at times, and then sometimes there's less to talk about. So, we're kind of almost maybe similar to other podcasts, playing it by ear a little bit. But yeah, listen, we're hitting August all of a sudden, and it's all going to start taking shape. Can't wait.
Is there ever a quiet time when you're a Nottingham Forest fan? As you said earlier, we're always in the headlines, like it's just chaos. Why is there not a Netflix documentary about us? They've really missed out. Like
they missed the boat.
4 years.
I'll tell you what, if they had decided let's follow Forest, now they've got up. Let's follow Forest in the Premier League. They would have not been short of drama. It would have been absolutely brilliant. I mean, let's face it. I think every single club loves commenting about Forest. And you know, I got a bit irked when I saw people making comments about Forest in season 1, but that quickly dissolved. I just laugh. I watch videos on social media and I read things and I hear things, and I just laugh it off and go, you know what? You can comment as much as you like about things you don't know, but the bottom line is, we as Forest fans, the most important ones, we really know what's going on, and it's going to be a fantastic season, guys.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you very much for joining us both. I'm really looking forward to the season. Hopefully we can congregate in the Trent Nav and fail at the quiz at Fotheringham's quiz. I mean, like, honestly, I came really close last season and didn't listen to Christian or Reese about a question. I would have won it, and that would have been like eternal glory amongst Forest supporters in the Trent Nav. But I didn't listen because I'm a rebel. I'm a Nottingham Forest fan, and I don't listen to anyone. Don't listen to anyone else. Bugger them. Like, that's that. But no, if you want to listen to any more Talking Reds, I will drop the links in the description below. Go check them out. They do unbelievable stuff, unbelievable intros from Greg. And I would never try and replicate them, but do check them out. And until next time, come on, you Reds.